welcome everybody who's watching us. We're grateful that you're here and you're running your eyes and your ears to what we have to share today. My name is Steve Swanson. I'm a parent, soon-to-be grandparent, and engineer, retired business executive, and a 20-year volunteer in education here in Austin, Texas.
And my name is Alice Linahan, and I am excited to be here with other moms and dads, grandparents, soon-to-be grandparents, to talk about education and what the reality is on the ground in our state of Texas, in traditional public school, charter school, private school, homeschool. What is the reality on the ground for our children? So
Where are you from?
I am from Argyle, Texas, and I'm a mother of three. I've got a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
I'm Monica Sanchez, and I am a mother of two students in middle school here in Austin ISD. I am very happily active in the community and have been paying attention to public education issues for the past 6 years.
My name is Jennifer Fleck. I just recently moved to Austin this last summer, but prior to that lived in Houston for 20 years, raised two kids, and I have, my youngest is 12 in the public middle school in Lake Travis.
Good afternoon, I'm Patrick Huff, and I'm from Tomball, and I'm a public school educator, 30 years school administrator, and I got deeply involved in the whole school reform agenda shortly after I retired, and we've been working hard ever since to try to expose what has been going on and also try to bring truth to the agenda. I'm married for 35 years, have 3 children, and enjoying life. Thank you for coming.
I'm Gutierrez, and I'm the mother of two children, one who has graduated from the public school system and one who is still in public school in Katy ISD. I am a member of our Katy ISD Legislative Committee and have been involved in public education issues for about 3 years.
I'm Houchins. I'm a mechanical engineer for 24 years. I have 2 middle school children, an 8th grader and a 7th grader. I got involved in this education issue when my 5th grade daughter started bringing home homework that didn't make sense. That was the fall of 2014. So I've looked at all the standards and taken all the assessments, and I want to talk about what I think the problems are in math education.
So I'll tell my story. I was volunteering in the first school that was closed by Texas's accountability system and then reconstituted here in Austin, and about 7-8 months after being formally on a team, the local committee, the school committee and the PTA, they started planning to bring an outside entity in to run East Austin schools, and there's a long story behind that. But what started me to actually say something's odd, something's different, I have to learn more, was I was in a cafeteria at a middle school, and the superintendent was presenting to about 200 people on why we should like this outside entity coming into Austin. And one of the young students from the high school stood up and very eloquently spoke about taking pride in his school and how they were doing well. And then she started me when she actually condemned him and demeaned him and actually disgraced him in public. And I said, there's something going on here that's deeper than what I've touched yet. So that started my work in researching, starting to understand what was really going on in governing education in Texas.
Once again, Patrick Huff, just in case you didn't hear the first time, we might want to all reintroduce ourselves. When I was involved as an educator, like I said before, we had 30 years of school administration, and 11 of that was as a head principal at a middle school and a high school. And we had in our district, as most districts do, a section of the district that was affluent and a section of the district that was middle class, and then a section that was living in poverty, or the elements of poverty. And we had schools associated with each one of those communities. When I retired, we began hearing the term school failure. That was a term that heretofore we had not heard before. And interestingly enough, school failure was taking place in our Title I schools. And so after I retired, when I was away from the rat race of being a principal, I began to look back and try to figure out, well, why is it that our Title I schools are having difficulty? And it became evident what was happening. And beginning in 2010, that is what really propelled me to get involved in the agenda of school reform. And later on, we'll be talking about that more in detail.
My name is Jennifer Fleck, and I lived in Houston until very recently and raised my children there. In 2012, my children were both, the two younger ones were both in private school, but their best friends and neighbors were in public school. And my best friend was a parent, and she came to me and in shock and awe with a sex education curriculum that was scheduled to be implemented in Cy-Fair ISD that fall of 2012, and she asked me to review it as a favor. I'm an attorney and her friend, and so I did, and I found it shocking. I had no experience with sex ed. I knew nothing. And I read the curriculum and I watched it because a lot of it was videos. It's a curriculum called It's Your Game, and it was developed by UTPRC, and it was horrible. And I went to her at the end of the day after watching it probably for 10 or 12 hours and told her that she should do something about it. And that was a Saturday, and I went to church the next day, and I know this sounds crazy, but God was like, no, you're going to do something about it. And so from that point forward until today, I have devoted countless hours just teaching myself what the issues are and how it happens and who the sides are and who's for what and who's against what and the content of actually what's being taught. And so that's what I do, is I try to influence and educate parents about sex education in public schools.
My journey began around 2012 with my son, who was then in 6th grade, and we thought that he may have developed a learning disability, which I later learned children do not develop learning disabilities in later years. We spent about a year and a half working to determine what his disability was, with doctor after doctor, teacher after teacher, educator after educator telling us that he didn't have a learning disability, that something else was going on. And I encountered an instructional coach in a nearby community who explained to me that this was not something individual to my son or even to our school district, that throughout the state, these children were experiencing gaps in their learning. About the same time, I had a teacher tell me, please stop. Just stop badgering your child. This isn't your child. This is a bigger problem. It's systemic, and you need to dig deeper and understand what's going on. And so I began to investigate in the district and do research, and encountered these fine people during that time, and have since learned that there is a very deep and disturbing problem. What I have attributed to my son's what we thought was a disability, and have since determined is the school system, is that the standards are flawed and creating problems in the curriculum and delivery systems of the curriculum and assessment accountability that make it appear that our children have learning disabilities when in fact they have gaps in their skill sets. And so I am here today with these folks to help you understand that better. Thank you.
I'm Randy Houchins again. Like I said, my journey started in 2014, the fall of 2014, when I saw homework that was coming home that just didn't make any sense. It was not really mathematics. And so I took all of the assessments for math, grades 3 through 8 and Algebra 1. I took all the 2014 assessments, and then when the 2015 assessments came out, I took all the release questions they put out, took those, and saw a vast difference in the way the questions were written. The 2015 test, which were the first assessments to test the 2012 TEKS that were introduced. So the 2014 school year, 2014-15 was the first year that the 2012 TEKS were really implemented. So you can see that the questions were questioning more about a process, a method of solving a problem, and not really focusing on, does the student understand mathematics? So I found that quite shocking, and wrote a report, which I gave to the State Board of Education. I went and testified every chance I got to the State Board of Education. Just finished my 15th testimony in February to the State Board. I've now written 3 reports. The last one is an assessment of the 2016 STAR, grades 3 through 8 in Algebra 1. And I tied the wording in the standard that creates the need for those types of questions. So it's, as Kim said, we truly have a standards problem. These concepts where you emphasize a process over mathematics, that's in the standards, and that's what I've been trying to get fixed. We've even had an expert from California, Dr. Milgram, came in and pretty much validated everything that I had been telling the State Board, and several other parents, engineers have been telling the State Board. The problem is a standards problem. It's not an assessment problem. It's not an implementation problem. We have to get the standards fixed. And that's been my goal for the last 2.5 years.
My name is Monica Sanchez, and I started getting involved with the educational arena back when I was the Austin Council of PTA's president. And at first I drank the Kool-Aid, and then I started to realize that it tasted really bitter when I understood that the adults in the system were making decisions over our children that did not take their needs into consideration at all. And while I was ACPTA president, I made a lot of presentations through local media on television, and a lot of parents started calling me asking for advice on situations that were going on with their particular children, a lot of them being labeled as learning disabled and not really understanding why they were being labeled that way. So I started to read up on school district policy, and then I discovered the Texas Education Code and discovered that in many cases what happens here at the Capitol is not necessarily what's happening on the ground with our kids. And so I've continued to stay involved because of the fact that we have adults making decisions over our children on a daily basis without taking their needs into consideration.
Thank you. Again, my name is Alice Linahan, and I just have to say I'm honored to be standing up here with these amazing people. You know, there's a lot going on today in the Capitol. I know that there's a Education Finance Committee hearing going on, and a lot of our elected officials are busy in those hearings, but we are here today in this hearing room to have our voice be heard. My trigger point as a mom, I have had children in private school, the traditional public school, and now I'm a homeschool mom. And what I have found in my research is, as so many under this dome are saying that the solution is school choice, the reality is there is no choice. When I sent my oldest son to a private school and he was struggling in math, the math that Randy was talking about, this was one of the top Christian private schools in North Texas, and he was using Common Core math and really struggling because the standard is these college and career ready standards. My daughter, we've experienced with the online curriculum, exposure to things that are not about reading, writing, math, and history, but about attitudes, values, beliefs, and behaviors. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. And now, with knowing what the system is in place, that there is no way out, I have pulled my youngest son out and I'm homeschooling him. And when I hear about legislation like the Education Savings Account, and I know the research, I know what laws have been passed at a federal level and what laws have been passed at a state level that have created this system where our children are merely human capital for the workforce. And the commodity is our children and their data. And with the school choice legislation, I believe, and the research and the documentation that we've been able to pull clearly shows that the school choice movement is an access point to access all of those homeschool kids that they don't have yet to collect data on them, those private schools that aren't necessarily taking the money, that they want to entice them because they want access. And so what we're going to talk about today, you know, all of us, we've talked about that we've testified in front of the State Board of Education. We've also testified in front of the Senate Education Committee during their hearings back in August. And what's interesting is when the Senate Education report was given to the Texas legislature for this session, none of our testimonies were included in that report. None of our concerns were included in that report. What was in that report were the invited guests and the lobbyists who testified at the beginning of the day, and none of the parents and the concerned citizens who were pushed to the end of the day when many of our senators weren't in the room. None of that testimony was included in that Senate Education report. And so what we have done is we have written our own report. And this report has been hand-delivered to all of our senators, all of our House members. And we are here to give a legislative briefing on the Senate Education Committee report. And then also we know that there are moms like Jennifer and others who have testified in front of the State Board of Education. Randy's testified 15 times. And we aren't hearing progress, or we aren't seeing progress to our concerns. What we see is a push to online, personalized, competency-based learning. And so we're going to talk about that today. But in order to talk about that, I think we've got to go back and look at how we got to where we are today. And Dr. Patrick Huff has written a book, The Takeover of American Education. And he is going to be our first presenter today. And he's going to talk about the accountability system and how it came in through No Child Left Behind. So we'll cut the camera right now and we're going to get set up, and then we'll come back on live with Dr. Patrick Huff.